For today's first session, we're going to really focus on how to leverage networking to enhance your job search. And this is just my sort of subtitle, always alludes to the fact that finding a job in this country is definitely a social activity. I'm sure many of you have already attended some of my workshops that I've been hosting over the summer and the fall semester, and I always start every workshop with an important disclaimer. This is a reminder to prioritize self-care to sustain your mental, emotional, and physical health. It's very important that you develop coping mechanisms to manage uncertainty, stress, and anxiety. This is particularly important for an international applicant, right? We're navigating more complexity when it comes to the environment that we're currently in, and I want to make sure that you guys have the support that you need. So in order to do that, you have to make sure to schedule self-care into your weekly schedule, whatever that might look like for you. Half an hour of meditation, walking, rock climbing, you get to choose how you take care of yourself. It helps you to stay positive, energetic, engaged, and motivated, all essential ways of performing on the job market to get a position. It also helps you to avoid burnout. As you all know, it takes 6 to 9 months to get a position, so it's really important to think about the long game. It also will guarantee you a high level of performance for a long period of time. And so ask yourself, what does my support network look like? How many hours per week can I Skype with my family? What does my familial support network look like? What can campus offer me, and what are the campus resources I have access to? So the undertone for today's underlying sort of message for today's talk is really going to be about that finding a job is a social activity, and this is really why networking is essential for your success. So today we want to kind of highlight the learning objectives. We want to demystify and redefine networking. We want to conceptualize of networking as an essential part of a successful job search. We really want to understand why networking is an effective strategy. This is important because if you don't know the rules of the game, you don't know how to play it, right? And so I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about expectations and how to navigate those with people that you're meeting in the industry, in the companies that you want to work with, and hopefully a position where you can land a position. Identify networking goals and tools to achieve them. We're definitely going to sort of have a lot of tools available to you to help you achieve these goals. Develop a general framework for how to build and expand your professional relationships and contacts. And so we'll talk about the how. That's going to be most of our conversation today. And then, of course, learn how to use informational interviews to grow your network. This is one of the essential tools that will help you succeed. So, what is networking? This is really important to know. It's important to know because you need to be aware of the expectations. And here we're obviously talking specifically about what is networking in the United States, right? What does that look like here in this country? And what are the rules that I need to know in order to engage and to connect with people successfully, perform in a way that's expected, and also perform in a way that's going to elicit a positive and effective response. I think one of the best ways to start defining what networking is by defining what networking is not. So networking in this country is absolutely not transactional. It is not asking somebody for a job or convincing somebody to hire you, right? It's also not about the short term, and it's absolutely not unethical. So it's important that sort of icky feeling that you might have around networking, we'll try and demystify it and try and take some of that agency away from it so that you can use it to connect with people, learn about the companies that you want to work in, learn about the positions and how those people got into those positions so that you can accumulate data, incorporate it into your job materials, and be a really competitive applicant. So now that we know what networking is not, let's pivot our attention and really identify what networking is. Networking is establishing mutually beneficial long-term relationships. This is very important because it takes time. It takes a lot of time to build these relationships. I do want to say that it will depend on a case-by-case basis what that foundation for a relationship will look like. You know, is it several transactions through email communication? Is it the foundation that you build by sending them a connection on LinkedIn, following by a longer message, followed by a request for an informational interview? It could also be a relationship that was built off of a mutual connection that you have with somebody. So that could look pretty interesting, but it still requires that back and forth, that relationship building that you need in order for the other person to be invested in the relationship, as well as, understand why you're reaching out to them and how this could be a mutually beneficial relationship. Networking is also about having conversation with professionals and building sincere and genuine connection. This is a very important aspect of relationship building in the United States. It has to feel sincere and genuine. If the person with whom you're trying to connect with feels that your connection is artificial or not sincere, they're going to completely disengage and they're not going to become invested in your professional success. They might not offer advice, and they might not even sort of respond in a way that's that gets you to a place, where you can actually start achieving the goals you have for connecting with that person in the first place. Networking is reciprocal, so there has to be a mutual back and forth. Networking is also leveraging existing relationships, and we'll look at that together because it's also where you can start in growing your network. And I think a lot of you might think, well, I don't know anyone, I just moved here. And we can just really kind of unpack that and focus on your pre-existing network and how you can grow it over time. It's also a form of collecting data and insight into the industry that you're trying to penetrate, into the company that you're sort of aspiring to get a position in. It's really important to have your networking strategy run parallel to your job search strategy. So for example, if your job search strategy, you have a list of targeted companies, the next step would be to come up with a list of individuals that you want to connect with in those companies, right? So that you can start making those connections. You can find people that can advocate for you, that can validate you, that can vouch for you, and that can speak to your value, so that the hiring manager can be reassured that hiring you is the right decision for the team, for the company, and that you can fulfill the need that they're looking for. So now that we know what networking is, let's really briefly look at some data that's going to reaffirm why networking is so important. So the first kind of data point is up to 70% of applicants find a job through their network. Yeah, so let's kind of unpack that. What this means is that 70% of people that apply for positions land their position through their network. This is a really important point to reflect on because it sort of reaffirms the significance of this as a really effective strategy for getting your foot in the door and getting you to achieve your career goal. The next data point is about something that's referred to as the hidden job market. So up to 80% of all job opportunities are not publicly advertised. And I just want to take 1 second for that to kind of sink in. So up to 80% of all jobs are not publicly advertised. What this is telling us is that all of the work that you're doing, which is amazing work because you guys all have amazing research skills, looking at positions online, researching finding job opportunities online, that's about roughly 20% of all professional opportunity that exists out there. And so we need to start using networking in order to identify all of this opportunity that's being kind of untapped at the moment. And as I already mentioned, this is often referred to in the US as the hidden job market. Through networking, through your ability to build connections and talk to and communicate with as many professionals as you can, that will lead to more professional opportunity. The unadvertised piece of the previous slide is important as well, because oftentimes here we're referring to positions that are sort of not they're still being created, right? And so you can either find out through conversation about something that's in the works, right? And then prepare to apply for those positions, or you can start priming, right, the employer to think of you in the terms of meeting the needs of the team, meeting the needs of the company, thinking of how you align with the fit of the company or the organization. So I did absolutely want to introduce this concept because it's one of those rules that you don't know until somebody tells you. It's also important to think about this point for a second. Companies are driving, and they're doing this themselves, the culture of networking, because they rely heavily and place a lot of value on referrals for hiring. So this is something that companies want and prefer to do. So by networking and by building connections with professionals and companies, organizations that you're interested in, you're actually doing exactly what the employer expects out of a really strong and competitive candidate. Some reasons, just kind of to give you a preview of the mind of the employer. Employers prefer to hire through their network because it saves them money, it saves them resources, time. A lot of hiring managers don't have the ability to even reflect on the needs of their own department. So it's hard for them to articulate that need because of just how busy they are. And it's also something that's really useful because the hiring manager might know when somebody is leaving a position, but they're not able to sort of share that in a public forum. So here we get to this kind of, I just want to reiterate and demystify why you should not be feeling intimidating. Don't worry about feeling uncomfortable, and don't be afraid of networking. And let's kind of considering the following. Networking is part of the process. It's literally part of your job search. It's part of the application process. I want to definitely normalize that. This is going to be part of your professional lived experience as you develop as a professional. If you're worried about taking up somebody's time, if you think that's going to be perceived as too big of an ask, just remember these people are their own agents. They can say no if they're too busy. It's also absolutely normal not to hear anything in return. The things we're going to talk about shortly are going to increase your response rate with the types of emails and requests you're going to be formulating because you're going to be making them very specific, right? You're going to clearly define why you're contacting them, what is the mutual connection that you share with them, and specifically state what you're asking for, like how much time do you need, how you want to meet them, and the fact that you're flexible around their availability as well. In America, it's very much true that people love to talk about themselves, and they actually feel flattered when you email them asking them for advice or requesting an informational interview, which really means asking them a series of questions where they get a chance to talk about the work that they love doing, and they're able to give back and share what they have learned as a professional with a younger, professional. So it's a form of giving back, and altruism is very important and highly valued in American society. I think right now with all of the social movements that are happening as well, there's more tendency to give back. And so the sense of community in American culture is more at the forefront. So this is actually a good time to prioritize and start connecting with people. And then this is just kind of a friendly reminder that even if you are intimidated, uncomfortable, and afraid, know that all of this discomfort is worth it because you're building a network that will help you develop your career, achieve your career goals, and increase your quality of life, expertise, and experience. So let's kind of just take a second to define our networking goals. And just take a pause for a sip of water. So why are we networking, right? We want to identify unadvertised job opportunity, aka tap into the hidden job market. We want to create connections and gain insider information so that we can learn the language of the industry, recognize the priorities of the company, be able to demonstrate fit and how we can bring value, as well as then taking all of this data and embedding it into our job materials, right? This is really important. One of the other consequences of successful sort of relationship building in a professional environment is securing a referral. This is one of the most important ways that you can get validation from inside the company, which will then reassure the hiring manager that hiring you is the right decision for the team and the company. It's also the best way to create a direct line to the people with the executive power to hire and to advocate for you. And I'll kind of reaffirm that point on the next slide. And like I said, it's another way to circumvent what we would call almost like an HR block for a lot of international applicants whose application materials tend to kind of stagnate, and we want to make sure that we're connecting with people so that we can ask them after there's a foundation upon which we can ask for something, right? It's really hard to ask, and we can discuss kind of what those scenarios would look like. I mentioned a couple in the beginning where if you've been communicating with somebody over email, or there's a mutual friend who introduced you to over email, you know, the foundation for that, for asking for a referral is pretty strong in those scenarios, right? So this is just to say that networking is going to get you in front of the hiring managers, and it's going to create buy-in from individuals inside the company. Something that employers worry with international applicants is actually your commitment, and by connecting with people in that organization, you're demonstrating how truly committed you are to them. So that's really important, so they don't have to worry about, you know, investing in you, onboarding you, hiring you, for them to not feel like you want to be there for sure. It's also a way of creating a network of advocates and people that will truly be invested in your professional success. You know, colleagues who want to have you as a colleague, who will then vouch for you to the hiring managers and decrease your risk value, which is currently an issue that employers, there's a perceived risk with hiring international applicants. And what we want to do is we want to kind of use our connections to abate that anxiety and to reassure them through this network of advocates that we're the right person for the position. And like I said, this is just the best way to make sure that our documents get in front of the hiring managers and don't stagnate at HR. So how do I build a network? So the best place to start is with who you know. And here I can give you some ideas for how to generate and really dig deep into this notion of your pre-existing network. And by pre-existing, I mean literally your current network. And so thinking really broadly about your network on campus. So who is it on campus that you know? Who are your campus contacts, faculty, staff, the people you interact with? I always make sure to think about your peers and colleagues, fellow graduate students. You can connect, if you did your undergrad at a different American institution, connecting with those individuals and seeing Some of them are probably working in American companies. Some of them might have went back home and are now planning to come back. So there's sort of a mutual interest there on how to navigate that space. Absolutely think about your professors, your neighbors, the community that you have around your hobbies. The reason why I bring this up is mainly because we ultimately don't know which conversation might lead to a professional opportunity. And the more conversations, the more you engage with people, the more you disclose to them what your professional goals are, what your professional interests are, the more they'll sort of self-volunteer some of this advice. They might also self-volunteer people that you connect with. And this is where recognizing the value of the second and third degree connections is really important. That's how you start from the people you know and build out into a wider network of professional connections that you can then leverage to see, how did they get into those positions? Meeting people with PhDs or meeting people with advanced degrees who now work in Google, for example, you can ask them a series of questions around how did they leverage their academic experience? What is Google responsive to when it comes to valuing PhD talent, right? And you can find out these answers directly from the people in those companies. This is an example of a more sort of informal catch-up, a request for like a Zoom meeting or Skype, whichever your sort of platform is for interacting. You would be asking really to kind of a little bit of their time to tell them what's happening in your world. This is great practice in the lower stake environment before you start connecting with recruiters and hiring managers, because how you communicate about your professional identity is probably more important than how qualified you are in terms of like how big your accomplishment track record is. It's really about how much and how you can persuade them that you're the right person for the position. And so this is just an example of how you can start practicing as well as generating momentum that will help you be very comfortable by the time you get in front of the high stake people. Here's like the time I wanted to introduce all of the resources that are available to you to start thinking and reflecting on your network that you have here on campus. You can use InnerStride to expand your on-campus network. You can connect with international students across the whole university, something that we all know is very difficult to do on a campus with 60,000 plus. So this is a way to sort of bridge that gap and to create a sense of community, to be able to ask people how they're navigating things. Maybe some of them are currently being onboarded, maybe some of them are getting offers. Having this network also is a great way of not going through this process completely on your own, which I think helps you keep your morale up. So InnerStride is really important because I think thinking about your on-campus network is multifaceted, right? So you can think of your peers, colleagues, people that are still on campus, and then we can kind of take a look at and see who we can find who's no longer on campus, who was previously affiliated with UT. And here, the power of the tool of LinkedIn really is important to recognize. You can do some really amazing research on LinkedIn. You can run advanced people searches, and I've provided the link for how to do this particular search, which has been saved. You can search by a country that you are from. So you can put China, you can put India, you can put Korea, Russia, whatever the mutual connection is, to find people that are from that country who are now working in the United States. And under title, you would put a similar type of position that you're, hoping to break into, software developer, software design, whatever the other examples might be. this would be individual to your interests. And then you would put the university they went to. Here, obviously, I put the University of Texas at Austin to demonstrate to search by your graduate degree, but the same can apply to your undergraduate degree. And even if you got your undergrad in your home country, it's still valuable because you might generate results of individuals who are now working in the United States. And this is where you can create a really hyper-targeted list of alumni who you could connect with to learn about their path. And here it could be really interesting to talk to them about how they navigated, in particular, their sponsorship, path, if they ultimately immigrated, what did that look like, and any advice they might be able to share with you in this particular space. So now we can talk about strategies for establishing successful connections on LinkedIn. It's always encouraged to send a personalized connection request. So instead of just clicking connect and expecting people to accept, you want to make sure that you set yourself up for success by writing a customized message, highlighting why you're reaching out to them, maybe a mutual connection, and it could be as simple as, we both graduated from UT Austin, we're both from China, or something that you have in common where that person is going to see a form of investment that they want to kind of connect with. So sharing a mutual connection. Another way you can engage with that individual is through the content that they share on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. Obviously, if you engage with an audience member on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, you want to make sure that your tone is professional so that they understand that this is not only a social interaction, but a professional interaction. But it's possible to do that. I know plenty of my colleagues and I have professional Twitter accounts. It's sort of a staple of higher ed administration career paths. So every industry will probably have its own forum where people communicate and present their identities professionally. Till this day, LinkedIn is still the most sort of robust environment for this. You can also engage and do some really kind of actionable things and add value to the content that they're posting by leaving comments, maybe sharing an article that you think they'll find interesting, and sort of expanding on that initial connection that you found and the reason why you initially connected with them. Here I wanted to make sure to show you what that looks like in both the browser version and the LinkedIn app version. So for the browser version, you want to make sure that when you click connect, you then select the add a note option so that that's where you have a chance to add that 300-character personalized message, and your chances of getting them to connect with you increases trifold if you do that. On the app, instead of clicking connect, you want to click on more, and then you want to click on personalized invite, and that's going to allow you to include that 300-character message as well. One of the newest platforms for connecting with alumni, specifically UT Alumni Network, is Hooked In. And once again, you have access to all of these tools, so you can kind of put it on your calendar to start creating these accounts, looking at all of the functionality, prioritizing steps you need to take. You can, there's a lot of search functionality, and as you can see right here, I searched by degree type. I just put in PhD, and it generates all of the PhDs from UT, so that you might be able to now connect with them and ask them, how did they leverage their academic experience? How did they decide they wanted to pursue the type of work that they're doing now? And then obviously asking them really engaged and informed questions about, what kind of projects are they working on, and demonstrated your interest in them, in their company, and like how you can add value to that corporation. So that's Hooked In. And this is just kind of summarizing some of the tools you can use to identify potential contacts: LinkedIn, InnerStride, social media, Hooked In. The last two are volunteering, which is a great option for international because it's unpaid. It's a little bit easier to navigate. And obviously, VJ can give you a better sense of like how to navigate work authorization as an international graduate student. Also, think broadly, think hobbies. Think about people that you engage with if you play video games, right? If you play, I don't know, I'm thinking of gaming right now, but if you engage in rock climbing, think about how those conversations and disclosing your professional goals to those individuals could generate a potential lead. It could generate a contact that they suggest you connect with. So think about how you can engage in your professional development in your personal interests. And of course, you can also generate a lot of alumni results by going to the U Texas profile on LinkedIn and searching there as well. Other means of meeting people are, of course, engaging in virtual employer info sessions. Once you have that experience of connecting with people, go ahead and put yourself out there and connect with employers and talk to them about how much value you can bring, how you can lead a diverse team, how you are able to synthesize complex ideas and communicate them to diverse audiences. Engage in virtual panel events. This is a great way to identify potential people that you want to request an informational interview with. Attending departmental events, and of course, attending industry events. And my colleague, Melanie Pierce-Hooper, has been doing an amazing job organizing so many specific employer events that are customized for graduate students. Here, I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the expectations around effective communication in the United States. You want to make sure to communicate clearly, enunciate clearly, and project. This is something that takes practice. This is also a good time for me to say that networking and building connections with people in this particular way that we've been discussing today is a skill in and of itself. So making sure that you're spending time practicing is something that I want to encourage. You want to make sure to make eye contact in this virtual environment. You want to put your computer on a book or some form of mimicking that you're looking somebody in the eye, which builds rapport easier. It makes sure that the person you're communicating can see that you're engaging with them on a deeper level. This is like a very American expectation as well. You want to speak in a moderate pace. So if you speak too fast, you might be perceived as nervous. If you speak too slow, that's also sort of a form of anxiety. And what you really want to achieve is a level of communication where you're being concise, speaking in a confident and an enthusiastic way, because you're also trying to get them to be energized because of how much value you can bring to their company. You can paraphrase to show that you're understanding what they're communicating. And this, the next point is really important, that you're asking informed, engaging, and open-ended questions so that you can generate a dialogue and it doesn't feel sort of one-dimensional. And practice active listening, so nodding, using affirmative sounds, just making sure that the person you're talking to really sees how engaged you are in that conversation. We can spend just the last couple of minutes talking about how to effectively request an informational interview. I think right now the best strategy is to be really realistic about expectations, and so asking somebody for 20 to 30 minutes of their time for you to ask questions, listen and learn is absolutely reasonable. Just remember these kind of key things. This is not a job interview, and you're not asking for the job. This is a really important sort of unwritten rule, and I wanted to make sure that I clearly communicated this. This is not a time to ask for the job. This is a time to demonstrate interest, to show them how committed you are to the type of work that they're doing, to tell them explicitly what your expectation is for this conversation. Is it to learn more about the company? Is it to learn more specifically about their position and how they decided to do the work that they do now because you guys have a shared academic pathway or similar sort of career trajectory? That's what you're doing. And this is kind of restating those goals here, right? You're connecting and finding individuals in the industry you're trying to join, identifying individuals in the roles and positions that you want to have one day, and connect with individuals that share a similar journey so you can learn from it, whether it's navigating sponsorship or around a shared identity. And this is just important to remember that the goals for an informational interview is possibly discovering a new job opportunity, getting referred to another member of the organization so you can start growing your connections within that company. Pick up any industry language that will demonstrate fit. This is really important. There's layers and layers of idiom. You know, there's a language to the way you speak professionally. There's a language to the way you write your job materials. And as an international applicant, the more you can expose yourself, the easier it'll become to sort of communicate in this expected way. It's also a great way to learn about career options and to really clearly match and sort of reflect on your own skill set and interest and how those align with what's expected out of you in these positions. And then, of course, it leads to that goal of creating a network of advocates. So in order to reach out effectively, there are three sort of key elements that you should always be doing when reaching out to somebody over email, when asking for an informational interview. So be very clear with why you're reaching out. You know, what is it about their career trajectory that resonated with you? You know, did they transition out of academia and now have an industry position, and specifically in the industry that you want to work in? You know, the second element is why they, you know, why not somebody else, right? Why are they the best person for you to learn from? And this is where you can dig a little deeper into that mutual connection that you have identified as the reason for why you want to connect with them. And then be very, very clear with your expectations. This is very important and is actually a professional standard. You know, how much time are you asking for? Do you want to connect over, you know, Zoom, phone? And offer them times that you can meet, but always state that your availability is flexible and you can accommodate their schedule. I wanted to make sure to provide you guys with an example so that when you're generating ideas for, you know, how to formulate your own request for an informational interview, you can do that. And then, of course, there's a layer of research and preparation that you have to do in order to have a successful informational interview. That's doing a lot of research on the person. That's doing research on the company. It's looking for that common ground as a means of creating connection. It's also important to think about what connection can I sustain after this, after our conversation? So how can I follow up with something? How can I maintain and sustain this relationship that, you know, if I started networking a year from when I want to graduate, you know, I can then keep that connection warm by sending them an email, letting them know that I followed up on the advice they gave me during the informational interview. You know, maybe it was an article that they suggested I read. Maybe it was a skill that they suggested I accumulate, or a type of experience that they disclosed that's particularly valuable. And I have done the work of incorporating that into my professional experience. So you can then have a reason to reconnect with them to make sure that you're sustaining that relationship. And then if there is an opportunity that presents itself at that company, you can reconnect with them and let them know that you're interested and would love for them to give you an internal referral for the position. And these are just examples of the types of questions that you can formulate for the informational interview. My disclaimer is that it's always best to probably come in for a one-on-one advising appointment, because a lot of these will be very sort of personalized to what you want to know or the type of information you want to get from this conversation. So please, please, please come see us. We are here to help. The last major point and the sort of expectation in terms of creating and sustaining a healthy professional relationship in the U.S. is always following up with a thank you email. You need to demonstrate that you are being respectful of their time. You're thanking them for all of the information that they shared with you, the advice they gave you. And this is also a great place where you can embed how you can follow up with them in the future, right? So you can say, you know, I'm really looking forward to connecting with Mr. Smith, who you said would be a great contact for me to connect with. And then after contacting Mr. Smith, you can follow up and tell them how that conversation went. These are just some reflective questions for you to kind of take home and think about, because I wanted to leave you with a sense of direction after the presentation today and make sure that you have you know, ways that you can start actively engaging and creating these connections and growing your professional network. So the question is, what do you recommend for work on the barrier of being English a second language candidate to effectively find a job? So this is something that I think you can navigate in several ways. I think growing in confidence, right? I don't think necessarily you don't have to be perfect at communicating. You just have to work on being an effective communicator. You know, if you start getting nervous when you're communicating in English, you might just focus on being concise, and you can focus on actually not having long answers to questions, but sticking to the point and answering directly what the questions are being asked. I think practicing, lots of practice with roommates. Maybe you can even just talk at your parents over Skype. You know, engaging in conversations in both formal and informal environments, I think is going to sort of cumulatively over time give you, and I think a lot of the time it's also confidence level. So don't overanalyze how you're performing. Don't use the comparative model to say, you know, my English is not the same as a native speaker. I also want to say that not all native speakers are good communicators, and this is just to kind of ground everybody's ego a little bit, because it's a skill. Communicating in a professional environment is something that native speakers have to learn as well. They just have the advantage of doing it in the language, you know, they were sort of speaking from, you know, birth. So, you know, don't let that stop you from practicing, and definitely don't compare yourself, and think about all those, you know, PhD students who are also working on their communication skills. Link to UT website for virtual career fair and networking. I think Tina can share that, if just like a link to our website for those resources. What's the polite way to re-ask a question if we cannot catch the question? Yeah, no, this is actually very normal. This is something that you can do during your defense, you know, your qualifying exams. You can just ask them to restate the question. Could you please restate the question? That's it. That's all you have to do. That's clear, straight to the point, concise. You're just asking them to restate it. A student asks, thank you for sharing, Olga. You're very welcome. I would like to ask when it would be appropriate to ask for job referral after connecting. So this is something we can absolutely discuss in one-on-one advising. It depends. It depends on the context of the relationship. I've seen it done in both the long-term and short-term. So when you started making connections with somebody maybe a month from when you're applying for a position, and so you've had enough sort of back and forth emails, you might have met for an informational interview, there's really a good foundation where you can ask for something. So if you want to chat, just go ahead and set up an appointment. if someone offers to give a referral and then they do, how do you follow up with them? So how do you follow up with the person who's doing the referral? You can just, depending on the time frame, obviously you want to be respectful of everyone's time. It also depends on the hiring practices of each individual kind of company and culture, because that referral process looks different in every company. This is something really important to state. That's going to look different from Google to Facebook to smaller sort of startups. It could either go directly, like they'll take your documents and email them to the hiring manager, which shouldn't take as long. It could also go the much longer route where those documents then go to a recruiter, like at the central level, then they have to end up at the team level. So it depends on the context, and we can look at that together. But you can always follow up in a really concise and polite way, just asking them, how did they navigate, have they had the time to make the referral? I mean, even when you're asking for the referral, you always want to ask for that first, right? Would you feel comfortable giving me a referral, right? Like concise, straight to the point, and in a very polite and professional way.